It was. Do you want to? I was like, of course, 5 minutes before we go live, hi, Cassia. 5 minutes before we go live, I decided that I wish I would have done more historical research on the last few times that Saturn was in Aries. So I'm sitting here like cramming on the computer. But first, I just want to say, welcome everybody. This is, if you have been hanging out with me and Ricky on Instagram for the past, I guess, over a year now, we have been wanting to move to this platform. And I don't know, we can make excuses, but the truth is that Saturn's moving into Aries, so here we go.
Time. It was
Yeah.
perfect time. It's so funny. You were thinking about the past, and I was looking ahead. So I was trying to look at the transits, and so I was like, "Hold up, I need to get these dates because it goes back into Pisces and it's going back into." And I was like, "What are these dates lining up?" So it was so funny. You're looking back. I'm looking
Perfect, that's good. Yeah.
to be here. I'm excited, and it seems super easy. And I can see the chat box as well, which is really
Me too, this is great. Hi Julie, hi Tanya, welcome. This is so great. I'm just I feel a little bit scattered, and I want to kind of honor that a little bit because I feel right now, as we are, so Saturn is still in Pisces, let's just say, like, so we want to, so we're, and Saturn is not through with its time in Pisces, meaning we're going to take a little dip into Aries, but it's going to go back. And so I'm feeling in myself, and I'm also kind of observing in life around me this back and forth between, should I pick this and go for it and do it? Or should I just sort of still hang out in the space of possibilities? And I just want to honor that if you find yourself in that space, it totally makes sense with this shift. At least that's how and the space. Ricky, you and I, we had a long meeting yesterday trying to get this whole thing to work. And the one thing that's been so on my mind is that if we don't create space, something else can't come in. And so if we try to always force something into a space, the chances of getting a version of what you've had before are really, really strong. Hi, Marty. Hi, Jennifer. So, Marty, yeah, Marty's saying, she's saying, if you want to make sure you see all the comments, please put your comments on live chat, not top chat. Yeah, thank you, Marty. Yeah, thank you. Good.
good
Hi,
to
Lena.
know. I love what you said about the potential of feeling a little scattered. I think that I do think it's so universal because so many people that I've spoken to are feeling this sort of scattered energy. It sometimes feels like I'm a little all over the place. And there's a kind of not trying to be hard on that part of ourselves right now, and kind of sit in that because I don't I think it's in those moments where we feel scattered, we start to kind of scramble or we start making mistakes. And it's just almost like those are the moments to breathe and understand that this is kind of what we're going to be feeling right now, and that's okay. It is okay to feel a little bit um, uneasy right now, especially, I mean, and not only with that, but we're building into this full moon in Scorpio, which is going to be an interesting one nonetheless. So I think we're feeling all of this culmination of energy. Things feel a little wonky, and I think it's totally okay to feel ungrounded. Um, maybe that's a call to action to spend more time by the water or in nature, um, to take a little bit of extra time just to not try to act so much in a scattered way, but maybe it's time for me to enjoy something like going outside and getting grounded or doing some yoga. Could be good.
Almost makes me wonder what was the thing that I thought was tethered before. And so this is one of the things I have been paying attention to. It's like when I think about anything, by the way, and this is sort of astrology basics, but it's good for me and for everyone to remember that when any planet's moving into Aries, that means it's just completed an entire journey through the whole zodiac, right? So it's not just that it's changing signs, it's starting a whole new evolutionary journey through the wheel. And if you want to think about that, like if you imagine the whole wheel like a life cycle, then we've just sort of gone through the entire from birth all the way to the compost or the death. or the culmination of something, and we're just about to start something brand new. And for Saturn, these are about 29 and a half year cycles to go through the whole zodiac. So you might even yourself think back to, depending on how old you are. I'm getting older, so I'm starting to get more opportunities to look back, which is maybe why, Ricky, you look forward more and I look back more. Um, but yeah, look, think about back about 29 and a half years ago, right? So for example, I was looking at the dates a bit here, and the last time that Saturn was in Aries, now there was a little bit of jumping around, but it was 1996 to 1998, and then 1998 to 1999 with some variation in there. So think around that time, about 29 years ago. And that's the last time we had an example of this. The one before was 67 to 69. Interesting that in 1968 is when MLK and JFK were both assassinated. Just thought it was interesting that shows up in there.
Again, I'm sorry.
It's for March 3rd, 1967 until April 29th, 1969. Marty saying, "This is my husband's 59th birthday. How did I wind up married to an old man?" Well, Marty, I don't know.
I just thought about when you just said that. It's I don't know. My instinct is getting into 1967 to 1968, 1969 was the building of the Vietnam War, and the Vietnam War was really taking off. And then I'm going back to the late 1990s, and that was paving way for what was coming in the early 2000s. And so it's just an interesting reflection to think about because a lot, I mean, I did study history in college, and a big core chunk of what's important, not saying, okay, how do I want to say this? There's a lot that's important about the Vietnam War, but a lot of what happens in the early 1970s is super crucial to understand about the Vietnam War. And it's kind of unique that when that was happening, Saturn would have been in Taurus, and then Saturn would have been in Taurus in 2000, if I'm correct, and when everything was starting to unfold in that area. Um, so it's kind of interesting to think that Aries being a sign that could tend to talk a little bit about war and conflict and aggression. What was kind of happening, not only when Saturn was in Aries, but what is Saturn and Aries bringing out of us that unfolds after? I think is super important as well.
Saturn is if you know where 0 degrees Aries, where Aries is in your birth chart, that will let you know where that's going to activate things personally for you. We can just pop that in there right now. I want to say that the quote that jumped out to me, if I was going through old emails yesterday, cleaning some stuff up, and I had emailed myself an Oprah Winfrey quote that says, I know, that says, one of the hardest things in life to learn are which bridges to cross and which bridges to burn. And then I was looking at Oprah's chart for a minute to say, okay, well, she's an Aquarius, right? And traditionally, Aquarius is ruled by Saturn. She's also got Venus and Mercury in Aquarius. And what's interesting, Ricky, is her south node is 23 degrees Cancer. Does that sound familiar or close to close? Ricky's is right in that territory.
This I love how you said that because that's something to think about. There could be this uncomfortability to starting this new cycle. Whenever we start something new, or there's a new evolutionary cycle beginning, sometimes we don't know how to handle things the first time, which is why I always say with Aries, it's connected to our instincts. And I think it's super important for us to, more than ever, I think, is going to be understanding what is actually our instincts versus what is the impulse. Like sometimes that impulse can be coming from the part of ourselves that's impatient that wants things now, and it's not really your instinct.
we take a while to get there. And so sometimes I wonder if for some of us that as Saturn's moving closer to Aries, we sort of feel like, wow, I've been waiting way too long. And to your point, then we can almost feel like I just can't wait one more second. People are joking about the senior discounts. I'm going to say I am now, I'll be 51 this year. I sign up for AARP. I say you take whatever benefits they give you when you get over.
Make your life easier.
um, but here, but the other thing too is that, so, and let me just give some dates here. So um, Saturn's still in Pisces right now. It has been in Pisces since March 7th, 2023. I mean, there was some little toggling back and forth. It will move into Aries May 24th this month, 2025. It will retrograde back into Pisces September 1st of this year. And then it will move back into Aries for the rest of the big, chunk of its time on February 13th, 2026, and it will stay there till April 12th, 2028. That's when it will move to Taurus. So this sort of in between time, which I'm saying between, I would say now and between February of next year, is a great time to sort of feel the back and forth, right? What is this space between Pisces, which sometimes can feel like, we sometimes say like a cosmic womb, right? Or where everything is sort of collected and held, including all kinds of karmic things that are not just ours. So with Saturn in Pisces, I'm gonna offer this, Ricky. I don't know what your take on it is, but that I think the last couple of years we've really been dealing with some collective difficult things that we have all participated in, meaning all of humanity, that we are now needing to find some boundaries and take some responsibility for them. I think that when Saturn moves into Aries, it may be clearer what our individual responsibilities are. As I have a big note down here that Saturn in Aries, the big question is, what are you going to do? Do you know? What are you going to do?
And I love that. What are you going to do? The other thing, the other question I wrote, because it's funny, I put, what are you going to do and who are you? Who are you showing up and who are you becoming? Because I look at Aries as this continual state of becoming. There's this energy of something is unfolding and occurring, but there's something to this being a new cycle. Who are you? What are you going to do? And the truth is that depending on where you are age wise, you could be completing a 29 year long cycle. My question is, what did you learn? What did you gain? What experience are you bringing to the table? And how are you going to handle this energy differently? How does it shape your identity? How does it shape your sense of responsibility? Um, I think these are all really good reflective questions coming into it. I'm reading a book right now called Conscious Grieving, and one of the things she talks about is that sometimes in life you don't know what to do when you don't know who you are. And there's this real big concept I've been thinking about. The word vision keeps coming to me in my own meditations. Like, what is your vision? What is this vision that you have for yourself? And it's very difficult to have a vision when you don't know who you are. When you don't know what to do, how can you have a vision for something? And so my question I've been asking myself, well, what is my vision? What is it that I want? But in order for me to even get to that point, I need to access more deeply. Um, what is being asked of me, and who am I in this world? Because my life has changed. All of our lives have changed in the past 29 years. So it's almost like, what am I going to do now with this wisdom that I've learned and these experiences that I've gained? And I think it comes back to, this is a time for us to not only our own kind of responsibilities in the world, but almost like a soul responsibility. What do you feel inside of you? What do you feel intuitively and instinctively you should be doing? Um, Go ahead. Sorry.
I have a question for you, for anybody who's here hanging out, or in general. I want to just reflect a minute on this question, who am I? Because there's part of me that believes and knows that I can't fully know what I am. And part of this lifetime is a discovery of the kind of almost like the unfolding or the revealing, or I sometimes say it's almost like peeling off the layers that are not me so I get more to the layers that are me. I'm curious, Ricky, when you with yourself or with your clients or with your students think about that, exploring that area of what am I? What are some of your best sort of tips or things that you've learned as far as giving your this expectation that I'm just supposed to have that all figured out? And to
Yeah.
me, that's not how it is. Jennifer saying trust intuition and instinct. No, I think yes, absolutely.
I think this is one of the most difficult exercises that we come into. I truly do believe this because um, I don't think you can get into becoming or understanding who or what you are with your mind. I don't think it's a mental activity.
Good.
I don't think it's something that I can think about as much as it is. I always ask myself not what do I think or what do I think the answer is. I'm always asking myself what am I feeling and what am I getting inside of myself? What am I feeling in my heart? So whenever I try to do exercises like this with myself personally, I try to do heart chakra work. I really try to sit with myself with a journal and I try to just focus on my heart center. And then what I feel is coming through, I write it down. And I really have. I mean, when I do readings, whether it's tarot astrology, I always do this exercise where I say it's from my will to thy will. I want to release my sort of any sort of ego attachment or ego identification that I may have in the situation. I want to remove myself from the equation so I can allow for spirit and source to kind of flow through for me. And I do that when I do my heart chakra exercises because we will have our own judgments. We will have our own sort of feedback that comes through always. And I'm not perfect either. I would love to be like, oh, I have this all figured out. I am at a moment right now in my life where I have no idea. I'm literally sitting with this now. And I tell myself, it's okay not to know today. It's okay not to know tomorrow. And I'm okay with that. I'm giving myself the space to say what I feel and when it shows up and how I'm feeling, I will sit with that. But it's not something that I think can be conjured with the mind. I don't think that's I think that's where we get into like those elusive thoughts. Um, and it just takes I think intention is a big part of it and creating the proper space. So I do yoga and meditation every morning and night, and to me those are ways of me getting to understand different parts of myself and what shows up. um, I did an exercise the other day with some exercises that I love are those things where people are like, I want you to imagine yourself, you're on a hike and you're taking a backpack. What color is your backpack? And what are you putting in your backpack? And are you bringing an animal with? And they ask you a bunch of questions, and it almost helps you understand in ways how your psyche is thinking. I love exercises like that because I did one the other day and it made me realize I was like, oh, I do feel like I am in this space of I don't know myself right now. I'm a little disconnected in different areas. And that happens when there's change. Change shatters different elements and it's paving way for something new to be born. And I also think that's very Aries.
Um, Jennifer says utilize trial and error. I cannot emphasize that enough. I say that because Aries is all about checking it out. Now, it's difficult because, and Susan says, finding myself through my disconnections. Me too, Susan. I can't tell you how many times I have a moment like that just didn't feel like me. That just didn't click. That just didn't flow. But you know what? If that's the discovery process it takes, I think that it's great. Oh, Julie's so sweet. She says, I thought I knew who I was, and then I started taking classes. Julie, yeah, yeah. And I mean, this is the thing because here's the thing. I have Aries rising. Part of my whole life's purpose with myself, not, I mean, sharing is part of it, is to discover that. That's because I'm so passionate about that that if you come to my class, you're either going to hate it and get out probably pretty quickly because you don't want to do that discovery, or you're going to find a new level. But I wanted to say though that, and by the way, and I say this, that my students are my best teachers. There are things that, Ricky, I know you know the same thing, but it is all hands down, right? That there is no finer moment to discover what you don't know than when you try to tell someone else that you know it. So
100%. And those are my favorite moments when someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer. And you're like, oh, I can't answer that question for you. But now I have a direction of something I'm going to go learn. I need to go learn this now. And I think that's such a beautiful thing to
Marty says that when she worked in internet communities, her favorite question to ask people was, answer quickly. There's a box falling from the sky. Anything you want can be in the box. What is in the box?
a great
Love
question.
it. Love it.
And those are exercises that really help you tap into elements of your subconscious. um, I was also going to say what I love about the concept of Aries is the action and reaction. I always say that to Aries is action, reaction, reflect. It's almost like a series of, and I'll give you a personal, I'm an Aries sun, and Tara knows the story. I went to the gym the other day and I got totally beat up by the gym that I can't walk right now. And I went in thinking I can do it, and I couldn't do it. And now I'm sitting here for the next couple of days reflecting. I'm like, wow, I can't do that. I need to do this better. And I would tell my friend who's a Virgo, and he's like, why would you do that? That was stupid. Why would you do this? That's not smart of you. But in my mind, I was just like, you learned through the actions of what you're doing. You receive the
Aries.
reaction.
And you are an Aries.
Hurts. I can't walk right now. I can't move. The reflection now is, what can I do differently now that I know this information? And that is really Aries energy. It's like I in a way created a karmic situation for myself. Karma is action and reaction. I created it for myself because I wasn't thinking. I always tell this to people, as an Aries, I really don't think, I just do. And there's this natural doingness that happens, and then you receive the I don't want to say consequence of it, but it there can be.
How about we say it this way? Because your experience, by the way, Ricky also has Saturn in the first house, so it's a perfect example of um, have to try something to discover a limit or to discover because this is the thing about Saturn. I'm gonna say too, and actually quickly, Tanya says, I feel like knowing yourself is knowing how you experience the world. I'm deeply sentient, but also realize that others don't experience the world that way. I think yes, and so here's the thing: is to know ourselves is to know ourselves in our wholeness. That includes everything. So all the parts, all the different ways we do different things. But in addition, I want to say Saturn energy, yeah, action, reaction, reflect. And what's the other one we always say with Aries? Whatever it is, like, it's fire first and then, aim later or whatever. It's like whatever. It's like it's everything that is like, yeah, totally. And but here's the thing: if you fire first, holes are gonna blow into some stuff, I think in some ways that wherever Saturn is in your chart, showing up in our lives, transiting in the sky, right? That it is showing where we need to identify some limits, some boundaries, and it's for our own good. Sometimes that we can overdo it where Saturn is, we can be too restricted, we can be too rigid. But to me, also, Saturn's always about redefining something. So if Saturn's in Aries, there's something about redefining my sense of self, my self image, what I think it means to be strong, what I think it means to be a leader, what I think it means to go after my own desire, right? So, but I want to say this, that Saturn, it's so interesting. We have all these ideas as humans, and this is good, this is bad, and Saturn is one of the ones high on the list of. Jennifer got it. Yeah, ready, fire, aim. Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah, thank you. But the thing is, like, there's the good and bad is just a human assignment to things. So Saturn, I always say, what does Saturn really want? I think at the heart of things, Saturn wants satisfaction for us individually. What does it mean for us to be truly satisfied? What does it mean to be truly stable? I think of Saturn as the great stabilizer. Saturn, helps it be so that the reality we live in helps us, for example, be the best self that then contributes to life around us. And that typically comes through some adjustments. So, Saturn, typically, you don't experience it as everything feels great. You experience feeling what is a sense of lack sometimes, what feels overly restricted, what feels like is not going to work, what is not working. To use Susan's point, what feels disconnected. But that's very, very useful because it helps you reconnect in a new way. Because I know one of my teachers always said, "What needs to be redefined if Saturn's showing up? What needs to be redefined? What if Saturn and energy or us energy, Saturn and Aries energy, how I use."
And the other word that the other word I use is restructuring. Um, and there's this feeling, I was reflecting on a quote, and I don't know who said this, but I had written it down, and it was something like, limitations are not the enemy here. Limitations that Saturn can produce are actually indicating us where freedom can unfold. And there's something that's unique to me about Saturn representing, it's kind of like in traditional astrology, Saturn is the last planet that is utilized. Whereas when we get into modern astrology, we integrate Uranus. And there's something very beautiful, I think, between Saturn and Uranus here.
Mhm.
And they're both changing signs, which I think is also unique for me as they're going through this. Um,
Yeah.
and they're gonna, I believe, they have their first sextile this year in the summer. I think it's in August. Saturn is going to
Mm.
sextile Uranus, which is an interesting energy for me to have these two dancing together because it feels like as much as Saturn can provide limitations, I encourage us to look at the limitations as the opportunity for us to see where we weren't free or where we might want more freedom.
Yeah, and what does freedom mean? This is like an age, like for all of life, I feel like people have been contemplating these things, but what does it actually mean to live with freedom? This also makes me think that Saturn and Aries, well, Aries is naturally ruled by Mars, right? So when you put Saturn and Mars energy together, some that is not like that can be some cranky energy. For example, when we're working with synastry between two charts, if there's a difficult connection between someone's Saturn and someone else's Mars, sometimes it's very difficult because Saturn tends to be bossy. Mars doesn't want to be bossed, and Mars tends to be pushy, and Saturn doesn't want to be pushed. Judith Hill does a great job of like summarizing all these things in her relationship work, which I'm a big fan of. But this makes me think about what's going on with bossy and pushy. You know what I mean? And what's available between bossy and pushy. If I'm kind of characterizing these because that helps me to think about it. Yeah.
Step back energy because Saturn wants us to put in the work and develop some essence of mastery in the action that we're going to take.
Susan, Susan says maybe that one foot on the brakes, one foot on the gas. She says maybe it equals out to a nudge. So then the question might be like, but it kind of depends on ourselves. Also, Marty says freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. And it makes me think of A Course in Miracles where it says that, what is real can never be threatened. So but the thing is, what's our relationship with our own existence, which is another Aries thing, right, Ricky? What is our relation with our own? Because Aries, I exist. Oh, and Jennifer is reminding me that Saturn's also mastery. So what does it mean to be a master of myself? I don't mean in some fancy like show myself off way. What is be a master of myself?
And that I think is total self-knowing and total it's not I don't like the word total, but it would be a deeper sense of self-knowing and self-understanding, self-awareness. Um and it's it's unique because I feel like when I look at Saturn and Aries, I feel like there's something that speaks to me because when I look at like the total landscape of all the planets, with Pluto and Aquarius, you have Uranus and Gemini, you're going to have Saturn and Aries and Jupiter and Cancer. It just makes me feel like there's something that we need to kind of reclaim or do. There's something on the inner landscape that needs to get done. And I feel like the other thing I'm thinking of, sometimes we can look at Aries is our relationship with our body, our physical, the body itself. Um, or in a way, I want to throw the word out like the masculine energy here.
Yang
There
or yang?
can
Yeah.
there can be a switch here, not a switch, but there needs to be a restructuring or rediscovery or a reflection on how this energy is showing up in our life, and how can we do this more effectively, or where is it really blocked, or where do I really need to kind of work on these energies?
You said that it made me think, and I know these are like sensitive areas to tap into, but I don't want to be too I want to like I also want to be honest about where we're at. That we can definitely say that masculine yang energy, we've got issues with it right now. Say we have issues with everything, but in particular, I mean everybody I think here is very aware of that, and so if Saturn is about taking responsibility, redefining, restructuring, Saturn's about integrity, Saturn's about limits, Saturn's about, in many ways, like what is the wise way to approach things. And Aries has to do with that raw, instinctual, masculine yang. I want to fight it, or or I want to conquer it kind of energy, or I just want to have what I want, which, by the way, desires are a beautiful, amazing thing, but unchecked, and with the inability to live relationally, which is the polarity point Libra, then we have individuals, and I will not name them. We have individuals that start to assume so much power and so much energy that they run everything else down into the ground. And I think in some ways that's a collective way of seeing where Saturn needs to put the brakes. I think Saturn's saying we need to put the brakes on some of this and work on it in a different way.
I love that. The I love the word desire. I love how you brought that up because there's something to this that with that sort of instinctual desire nature within Aries and Mars, I asked myself, is this a chapter for us individually to really reflect on what our desires actually are? This could be a chapter for many people as Saturn is exiting Pisces into Aries, going back into Pisces and then into Aries. What desires do I have? What desires have I exhausted? And where do I want to put that energy now? Where do I want to put that energy now? Sorry.
Just love that point on the which ones have I exhausted, because I think that's so huge. And Jennifer, I so appreciate you are, girl, you are making my Aries rising so happy with your, like, let's do this stuff, because I feel like there's something about this transit that does, once you check in and recognize or come to this place of this really is my desire, then Saturn is not a just sit around and think about it planet. It's like, you know what? If this is so important to you, Ricky or Tara or whoever is here, if this is so important to you, what are you going to do to make it happen? But I think what's important here is the getting to a place of knowing, because this is the thing, what is my authentic desire? And it's so easy. I mean, I'll raise my hand a million times for this, of having gone after something thinking that it was important for me. I got Aries rising, so sometimes I just do it because I need to prove I can do it, but I didn't want it. You guys have probably heard me say this. But I get to the end of the road, I'm like, I didn't even want to do that. And I killed my body and I busted my mind, and my nervous system is all dysregulated. But I did that physical marathon. You know what I mean? But I didn't want to. So there's something about when you are really in the space of doing the things that you do desire, there is a connection, I think, to that sort of universal flow in a very beautiful way. But we have so many layers that get in the way of what we think we're supposed to do, what we think we can't do, how we think we're supposed to look. So the desire gets controlled.
I love that you said because that also gives me so much Saturnian energy because if Saturn represents that sort of the consensus of society and reality and kind of what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to do and all these different types of things, you can get stuck in that loop thinking like, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is what I think I want to do, but I can't back out because if I back out, this is what other people are going to say, and this is what's expected of me. And Aries here wants to feel its freedom so that it can explore. And there could be that sort of back and forth energy where maybe there are some desires that we thought were our desires, but we're realizing, well, I'm not really sure this is something I want to do anymore. Saturn may step up to the plate and challenge us because through those societal norms and expectations, you have to it's there's that inner struggle that Aries goes through to just be like, you know what? I need to reclaim my own freedom, my own sense of independence. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm sorry.
God, Saturn and Aries, sacred, no. Not not overly emotional, not overly reactive. Saturn just says, "Look, this doesn't work." Right? Aries, I don't want it. Put them together. There's just this like wise, sort of stable. And you know what's so beautiful? I think I'm just preaching to the choir here, but with Saturn being boundaries, you don't really have to like state your boundaries if you live your boundaries. And I know this is something oftentimes I struggle with. If I'm struggling with boundaries, it's because I'm not energetically like truly holding that space. And so it's interesting. I don't know if any of you have realized this, but this I think actually feels like a pulling into a Saturn and Aries thing. Sometimes even energetically recognizing this is mine, this is yours, right? Or even this sort of feeling the space inside of knowing where, that's as far as I'm going to go. Oftentimes, just getting clear on that within yourself, that boundary, it is like it is, and I'm not going to say 100%, but it's perceptible to the world around you. So there's something beautiful here around being able to know when I'm a yes and when I'm a no. And to Aries, energetically with Saturn, I hold that space. I am that space. So I don't need to tell you that space. Now, I'm not saying that sometimes we don't need to articulate things. It does, we do. Marty says Saturn and Aries together is the energy of women once they have gone through menopause. Oh my God. Yeah, that's so good. Being a very perimenopausal woman, I'm like, oh, I was like, yeah. And by the way, everybody, I want to thank you, especially for being here today. Ricky knows this, but today, on this exact day, is the first exact hit of my Chiron return. So I am in a very, yeah, which is in Aries in my first house, right? So I mean, just this talk and these things, it is not just me pulling out of my wisdom bank of astrology. It is me in my life where I'm at right now. So it's nice to have a witness. So thank you.
I love it. I think it's such a way to celebrate it and welcome it on in. Um, and I always say that with transits, welcome the transits. We don't want to make them into the villains because they're not villains. It's an opportunity to grow and evolve. So, cheers to that.
Well, but what you just said, I love because most of you also know that I'm a huge RuPaul fan. And last weekend I spent a bunch of time reading the book Guru, and one of the things that RuPaul talks about the inner saboteur is he says look but don't stare. So there's something about like being aware of things but not getting stuck in them, and there's something about what you said, Ricky, that is like that. It's like, oh, I do this thing, or there is this part of me that tells me that I can't do it. I don't have to make that a problem, but I also don't have to choose to go with that part. And I feel like that's another Saturn and Aries type of thing where there's is actually a limit to how I'm going to let my reactive parts take over me. There is a capital S self in me, which I feel very oftentimes Saturn is kind of, I don't know if I would have said this before, but Saturn is wise in that way. Saturn kind of is the same way I think of, you may have heard me say talk about Saturn like Gandalf, like it's another feel I have of like Saturn energy, but we have that in ourselves. And so it's able to sit there calmly and say, oh, look at all the ways, that I'm reacting to this. And not to make small of them, but to say that we don't have to just, you know, chase those little things. And that is a relief. That gives us new choices and new stability so that our own egos are not completely, driving us crazy and everybody around us crazy.
That I'm going to use that Saturn as Gandalf. I like that. Because there is this. I mean, I always say that with Saturn, it is that wise elder energy, um, and so that totally connects to it. Um, I think it's funny because as you're saying it, I think about again the book that I was reading, and these are all concepts that are in this book. When you're dealing with different stages of change or loss, I feel like it's just so important to recognize and honor the part of you that is the heart and the mind. And I think the mind is the part that is going to try to sit in it and overthink it all or dwell in things, right? And I think I always ask, like, lead from your heart is such an important piece of wisdom because I feel like in this context, if you're not careful, you could get stuck in sort of that impulsivity. You could get stuck in those lower functions of Aries. And that could be part of what Saturn is trying to teach. And if some people are going through that, don't beat yourself up for it, but become aware that that may be the lesson of what the teacher, Saturn, is trying to illuminate.
Saturn is not burdens. Saturn wants to unburden us, but to be unburdened, I have to know what my burdens are. That's just it's uncomfortable, but it's the same thing. Like if I'm not in touch with the part of me that has this inner dialogue running that keeps me tripped up from doing what I love all the time, if I don't know about that, how am I going to do something with it? Saturn helps us know about things and do something about them. And it's interesting you brought in that because the body part, I'm totally with you. But Saturn also, there's a very mental aspect to Saturn, and Mercury is the esoteric ruler of Aries. So isn't it interesting that this mind body, I feel like as you're talking, it's really coming through. I can feel it.
So strong. It's funny because I was trying to connect it, and I, I normally people don't connect Aries to Mercury, but it's funny because in the past month, as I've been thinking about things with Aries, and as I started to dip my toes a little bit into the Vedic astrology, and I'm learning about how they view things, it's interesting because I'm learning a different perspective of Aries. And you could see there is a lot going on up here within Aries, even though they do represent some sort of instinctual energy. There is thought going on up there. There is something going on in that brain. And it'll be interesting because Aries also does rule everything that's going on up here. Um, and Saturn may want us to do some cleaning up there too. There may be something that's up here that we need to work on and address. And it'd be interesting, just with what you're saying, for those that like esoteric practices, what is happening as Saturn is in Aries and as Mercury is going through its retrograde cycles in the next year, which are going to be in water signs. It'll be interesting to see as Jupiter's in Cancer, Mercury's going to do its retrogrades in the water signs. What's going on emotionally? I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Think of anyone who's like older here. It makes me think of the Beastie Boys. Check your head. Like when you were talking, I just hear that. Like check your head. In general, and not that everything anatomic. I mean, like the mind is way beyond the head, but there is something about that Saturn and Aries. And check with what you lead with, because that's another thing. Aries, right? It's like, I mean, face forward, head forward, right? So what do you lean into? What do you tend to butt? What do you butt into? Think about the ram, those sorts of. I think, and again, it's not. It's about curiosity, right? Again, because if we do too much of that sort of shady Saturn, we will be too quick to judge, too quick to be critical. We will not be open to what's actually happening because we will not be able to tolerate, either the guilt or the shame that we feel in what we do. So what we need, honestly, is some Aries curiosity to be like, wow, what's actually happening here? From that place, there's a lot of things that are possible. At least I found.
Totally. And you know what else I would think about is if you are feeling frustrated when Saturn is in Aries, if you're feeling frustrated, if you feel initially blocked, if you feel like there's sort of that stopping, I would actually pause to see what's going on there, because is that am I actually doing this to myself? Is this like the Saturn and Aries energy? And I'm doing it unto myself, or is this really the energy where I am being too impulsive? This requires like a check in, a self check in, to be like, what's going on here? Because am I not being too curious? Am I being stuck in my ways? Am I being kind of that person that's being like a Mr. Grumpy Gills and you're not doing nothing and you're just being so hard and judging everything? Um, or is it the opposite? It would be interesting to sit with that to see where you're kind of showing up in that department.
Back to the bridges, right? Oprah's bridges. And what's interesting about, even more about the bridges, is if we play around with the esoteric ruler of Aries being Gemini or being Mercury, right? Mercury absolutely is about bridges and connections, which makes me think even more about this. Like sometimes it's easy, and I'm going to raise my hand for this too. It's easy to feel like I can't do what I want to do because something externally is stopping me. Now, I'm not talking about situations where there are literal things where someone is being, forced to do something they don't want to do. That's a different category. But oftentimes it's because we keep making the choices to engage in those places or spaces or with those people. This again engages the Libra polarity point to the Aries, right? So if I know that I really desire ABC and I know that I really want to do it, and just like Jennifer, I'm so excited I want to make it happen, then choose the things and the spaces and the energies and the people that help you do that, that support you to do that. If you choose everybody who tells you you can't, I'm going to say this, that's on you. And most many of us are not born into those people, right? They're not always naturally there. If you're anything like me, you may find that the cheerleaders that you hope to find in your family of origin is not how it happened. Now, I'm not saying that's true of all my family, but I'm saying you guys know, most of you know me enough to know this. So part of this is Saturn and Aries is, can I be, a champion for myself? Let's bring in the word parental here, because Saturn is a natural cosmic parent. How am I going to do that for me? Right. And I
I
think
how are you going to be that sort of strong? parental energy for myself. Um, I want to say in a way it's unique because I feel like we're restructuring that yang masculine energy, and maybe that's exactly what needs to happen is the way in which we may have fathered ourselves or the way that we were ourselves shown father energy needs to be changed. Um, and it's
Oh,
almost
this
like
is I love this.
yeah, that's something. And there's something else I was just thinking
Yeah.
about too. The word I was just reflecting on this as I was just saying it. The word I kept hearing like maturity, and there's something about a this sort of deepening of our maturity of our Aries energy, our authority, because Aries can be wildly immature, and so there may need to be some self discipline to be our own father in the way that we may not have received it. Or if we did have father energy and it was unhealthy, it was toxic, that needs to be reshaped, that needs to be restructured, that may show up because that could be affecting our ability to access that sort of warrior spirit that we have. Sorry, I want to hear what you were going to think because it's my mind just went down like six rabbit holes. Watching the fire ones were unique. I always try to try because if you don't, Mercury has the trend where it retrogrades, it kind of stays in the same element. Sometimes it teeters, but it really will kind of consistently stay. Fire signs and water signs, and you'll notice, I think, as Mercury is in our water sign. I think it starts off in a fire sign, then goes into the water sign, but we're heading into water. Um, I think that's going to be important, especially with it being in the esoteric ruler. What is our access to our emotional body? And I would like to say optimistically with Jupiter and Cancer, we should have a good chance to access parts of our emotional body, but Saturn will be squaring Jupiter. Saturn is going to have this relationship. So it's going to be this journey between what we're talking about today, and what you we talked about come June, July when we talk about Jupiter entering Cancer. How does this reflect into our emotional body? What needs to be integrated?
And I think this even just further heightens the parental dynamics that we were just going into. So and yeah, Tanya, no, I hear you. Like that those are deep things for many of us. And but I think even sometimes just being aware of, hey, wait a second, let me recheck with where I'm at with this energy in general. Sometimes we find that there is a whole new relationship we can reframe with something, and that doesn't just change our own personal lives, that kind of changes kind of what we bring into everything. I'm going to say one of the things in my opinion is that is so easy to do when we get frustrated, for example, of over dominant masculine energy or yang energy, then we tend to demonize it, right? And then we perpetuate the same problem, right? So this is the exactly, yeah,
Where's the
yeah,
balance?
that's right. That's right. And I'm going to say, but I will say that one of the shadow sides of Saturn and Aries is sometimes there's not a lot of balance. So this personal responsibility or personal growth, which is another way to think about it, because to me, Aries is so personal, but Saturn has a lot to do with growth, right? What do we all need to do personally to support things collectively? Other note I have on here was about time, and it's so funny because when I was going through my old emails, the other thing that popped up was this little thing that I wrote about time, but I actually wrote this. I don't know. I think it might have even been around when Saturn was moving into Pisces. I can't remember, but I actually feel like it's more relevant now than whatever I was talking about it back then. But I was talking about how we're entering a new era, and I think we can all feel that in general. But to really embrace it, we need a new relationship with time. Now, Saturn is ruler of time, right? And we spend most of our lives trapped between memories of the past and fear and hope that we project into the future. Right? We use time to limit ourselves and as an excuse for not doing all kinds of things, right? I don't How many times do we say I just don't have time? Now, We created time, right? Time's not a thing, right? I mean, we choose to live in time with our time zones and all of our time stuff. So I say, because we created it, we're bound by it. And Saturn shows the things that we get bound by. And so, for better or for worse, the rules, the structure, we need it, but then sometimes it becomes, the things that keep us stuck. So, collectively, time's not going to magically undo. But my note here is that we could bend our rules around time. We could let go of time at least some of the time. It's kind of my joke around it, right? So, but I'm feeling my own self wanting a different relationship with time. And some of my students know that when anyone ever says, "Well, I can't believe I didn't get to this earlier in my life," my response always is, "You're always on time." And there's something about that with that Saturn and Aries. What does it mean to really live in the truth that you're always on time? You cannot be not on time. And how would your world change if you could kind of hold that space also to say something like, I always have time for what matters? I just feel like there's something about the stability or the structure around Saturn that, and maybe it's something with the Aries in there. Some again, it's something energetically around setting that space that then almost like puts time on its head. So yeah.
Relationship with time, I definitely think is changing. And I think that those individuals that I think maybe are rigid with their schedule, that are like, oh my God, everything needs to be like, I need to be up at 8 a.m. and I need to have this done by 8:30, whatever. This may be a chapter for you where we need to maybe restructure, rethink, or rediscover our relationship with time. Um, because it doesn't necessarily serve the long term anymore. And that's something about Saturn. Saturn wants to preserve for the long term. If we look at it like a Saturn cycle, what is being built right now, Saturn wants to last for the next 30 years. So it's almost like what is being developed and going through its maturity process right now. It's almost like I always say this, like I don't want to invest time in things or people or ideas if I unless I see that it's something that I could see sustaining for years to come. If I'm in my mind where I was like, what is this going to be for me? Like, is this only going to be like a 1 month thing? We have to ask ourselves, do I really want to invest? Saturn wouldn't want just a 1 year thing. Saturn wants something to last time. And so that's just something that I would think about as we go through the Saturn and Aries cycle. What are you building? What are you putting your momentum into? And being realistic, I think, is important. Um, but I think our own relationship with time and how we view things, I think, is really important. Um, and I think books like The Power of Now, I think, is a great book to help us build a better relationship with psychological and man-made time. I think another great book is The Untethered Soul. Um, that could also help us rebuild a relationship with time as well. Um, It'll be interesting to see because I could see people the scatteredness and that sort of go, 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 go being even more intense for people. But then it's going to be unique to see how we build that relationship with the father of time.
If Saturn really wants to strengthen something, and if Aries is about sort of instinct, and I feel like Aries honestly is like really, it may be reactive, but it's in the moment, do you know? And Adam Gainsbourg, when I was first studying with him, he would always say Aries is real time. It's streaming consciousness. He would say it's like, and so if Saturn is to stabilize that, this could allow us to be in the now, as you say, m- more than before. But here's one of the things too, and Julie's saying all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us by Tolkien. Yeah, absolutely, Julie. Do you know how profound that is for Saturn and Aries to me? What to do, Aries, with the time Saturn? That's it. And it's almost like once you get that, and then you tap into that, the rest is kind of doesn't matter. You are already in that stream of consciousness. But what I want to say is, here's the issue though. If we think we need to know everything, if we need to be certain, if we need to know exactly what's going to happen, that will not allow this reconstruction of self and relationship with the moment. To me, like, that will very much get in the way, because Aries is not about hearkening to the past. It's about what happens now. And the other thing that my teacher Adam Gainsbourg used to say, some of you know that I have all these tummy sensitivities. And so I would always say, "Oh, well, when I ate that last time, it gave me a stomach ache, or it always does this." And he said, Tara, the way you live, you never know in the real moment what your body will do or won't do, because your mind is already decided based on the past." He said, "Every moment is a new moment. If we just had space to find out what happens if I am in that moment." And I feel like that's so Aries. And if we think about Saturn as strengthening, stabilizing, and the maturity and the mastery of being in the moment, that's pretty awesome.
And it's going back to that concept of action, reaction, reflect. I would ask ourselves that if we could try to, because what happens is this gets a little bit into like manifestation and attraction. That if you're relating to yourself and the conversations that you're having with yourself are tied to stories of your past, you're going to create a frequency for yourself that then manifests and attract those experiences again and again and again. And so I feel like the energy here is to change the story. And what happens here is that Aries energy truly wants to tell the story. And I feel like it's almost like I'm going to live it, I'm going to do it, and this is what's going to happen. I'm going to just do it. I'm just going to go. I'm just going to make it happen. And that gives a lot of people anxiety. And I think what happens here is that there is almost a duty, Saturn duty for us, I feel, to strengthen and mature our own relationship with ourselves, to trust ourselves, to tell a different story and to live a new story. And there's something in this process that I think could actually result in us manifesting or attracting better experiences in our life. And so I do, and I love that concept because if our relationship of our present moment is based upon our past experiences, which a lot of people do, it's almost like this is your opportunity to reconsider how are you relating to yourself right now, and how are you relating in your every moment in your everyday life right now in this present moment.
Because Aries would say, "I don't know, let me find out." Right? That would be an Aries thing. And but no, but Saturn is, let's check the records. You know what I mean? Like back in whatever. But I'm gonna say too, Saturn is staying power. So if Aries is self and Saturn is the ability to stay, how well can I stay with myself through when my history arises, right? When my reactions come up. When the point is, like, if I can stay with that, it's like in meditation, right? This is the same concept of when I'm meditating and my thoughts aren't a problem. I just let them sort of run like a river or whatever. It's that same concept with myself. Oh, I'm doing X again. Oh, I'm making myself, not good enough again. Oh, I'm doing, but there is a deeper sense. And I think Saturn really represents that here. There's a deeper sense, that wise part of myself that holds all of it together.
Totally. I think it'll be interesting um to see. And I someone was commenting on being a double Virgo, and something that I've been watching just with my own clients and students is people that do have charts that are predominantly tied towards overthinking or attachment to the stories of the past. And so it's
At me.
such of a transit for you, because who you can become if you lean into the lessons. I think you could find freedom from the thoughts that have blocked you from taking action, freedom from the thoughts that have created procrastination, from the parts of you that maybe didn't believe in yourself or trust in yourself. There can be a huge gift in this to trust those parts of you that are actually very intuitive and instinctual, you can't act on them because your thoughts are stronger than the action. This could be such a powerful transit for these people, and the South Node is in Virgo as well, so I think it's like a double whammy of energy to help release from that sort of need for so much structure and order. Um,
Ricky, all the things you were just saying, when each of us thinks about our own birth chart, think about where Aries is, and that's the area of life where a lot of this stuff that we've actually talked about this whole hour can really come through. So for me, now I have 7 degrees Aries rising, so it's not to the first house yet. I still have 12th house stuff to do, but in the first house, all these things we're talking about have a lot to do with me stepping out, me being a leader in my own life, me going after the things I want, right? Me having the courage to say, "Hey, this is me. This isn't me." Uh, and perhaps in many ways to look at some of the ways that I have been, I would say, afraid to kind of be a little bit shocking or to be a little bit stark in my response because I fear what someone else might think. I'm feeling these stirrings of, like we said earlier, it's more important to be me. And I think for all of us, if this was third house for you, this could be around communication and an extra double down on the way that you're thinking about things or the way that, learning and teaching. If it's a fourth house, it can be family and emotional dynamics. So I'd encourage you to really think about the house that the be in because it will kind of tell you your classroom, where.
I love that, and I think to apply it to yourself and say, this is what the teacher wants me to learn in the next 2 years. These are the this is the landscape of my lessons where I need to practice my sense of independence. I need to practice my sense of self. I need to discover this part of myself. I need to. There's something that screams, "What about me?" Like in this area,
Oh,
this
yep.
space of in whatever classroom you're attending for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Because Saturn's the teacher. Go, class is ready. Uh,
Oh, yeah. And the homework, what I would say, the homework is as uncomfortable as it is. Like Marty, for example, if you know it's first and second house for you, then choose first and second house things consciously will give you even more experiences with it. So it may not always be comfortable, but I oftentimes say with my clients, I'll say, well, even if things are all going sideways, if it's in the right classroom, I'm like, you yeah, I mean, I'm more concerned with we're not in the classroom at all versus there's some tumultuousness going on in the classroom. So I was like, get in the classroom. If it's the seventh house and you're someone who's really struggled with relationships, well, the choice might be or have new conversations, maybe meet new people, may share feelings that you haven't shared before, may really relook at the structure of those relationships. What do you really need? What does reciprocity mean to you? Um, yeah, I mean, there's just and because wherever it's just showing up, the what about me, I agree. And then also, how do I need to be responsible for me? I'd offer both of those. What about me? How do I need to be responsible for me in this area in particular? Yeah. Party says ugh.
I just heard, the benefit about this because Aries reflects into Libra. This axis makes me feel this. I feel, I don't know if I said this here. I don't remember where I said this, but I was spending some time researching. There's a philosophy term called enlightened self interest. And there's something about this that feels like one of the best ways that you're going to be able to make a difference in the collective right now is by accessing this part of Saturn and Aries and what is being asked of you. When you lean into that which requires a little bit of more self-interest that some people may have a hard time with, But when you do prioritize the self and you do what this is asking of you, you're actually going to be able to make a larger contribution towards the collective.
You got it. Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Ricky, is there anything else you want to add? Like I feel like for me, I feel satisfied.
I do. I feel content. I feel very fulfilled with Saturn and Aries. I think I'm ready personally. Experience. Um, I hope. Does anyone have questions on Saturn and Aries?
If anyone has any, pop it in. And again, thank you everyone for being here. It's a great conversation. It's so fun to see her. Even if we didn't read every comment out loud, it's been awesome to see.
I love it. I'm a fan of YouTube. I'm not gonna lie. I love it.
Yeah, so this is where we're gonna be from now on, unless something turns really sideways.
And then the other thing is our next event. We're gonna do Gemini season next week. I think next Wednesday or Thursday. I have to look at the date. I don't have my calendar next to me.
To be. Yeah, I gotta look at mine too.
I don't have my calendar next to me. But Gemini season is next week too, so make sure you guys come back for Gemini season. Gemini season is going to be a fun one. We have another planet. We have Saturn enters Aries in Gemini season, and Jupiter enters Gemini, or sorry, Jupiter enters Cancer in Gemini season as well. So Gemini season is a big one.
Shifts and changes. And there's no question we're entering a. I mean, there's a lot of powerful planets making big moves, which means that we are also all powerful planets making big moves.
I appreciate everyone. Thank you guys.
Likes you two better, so it's a win-win.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you. Bye.